The special qualities of this phase transition point are explained in terms of entropy, the measure of disorder in the system.
There is a clear, sharply defined maximum value of mutual information at a specific value of the entropy, and the mutual information falls off rapidly on either side of this. This seems to imply that there is an optimal working entropy at which cellular automata exhibit large spatial and temporal correlations.
Langton is describing a trade-off between order and disorder, between stability and change, that occurs at the point of a phase transition. He goes on to relate this to the problems of information and computers, explaining that information storage represents stability and less disorder, while transmitting information represents change and more disorder.
Briefly, information storage involves lowering entropy, while information transmission involves raising entropy. In order to compute, a system must do both, and therefore must effect a trade-off between high and low operating entropy. It would seem from the work that this trade-off is optimized in the vicinity of a phase transition.
If highly structured systems are a borderline phenomenon, if they are systems that are possible only at the transition point between order and chaos, we might expect them to be both rare and short-lived. Yet our world of life, the most highly structured system known to us, has flourished for 1 billion years or more. How is this possible? One answer to this question, according to Langton, may be that living organisms have evolved to maintain themselves at this critical transition point.
One of the most exciting implications of this point of view is that life had its origin in just these kinds of extended transient dynamics. Looking at a living cell, one finds phase transition phenomena everywhere. The point of view advocated here would suggest that we ourselves are examples of the kind of computation that can emerge in the vicinity of a phase transition given enough time. This hypothesis, if borne out, has many implications for understanding the role of information in nature. Perhaps the most exciting is the possibility that evolution reflects the process by which life has gained local control over a successively greater number of environmental parameters, affecting its ability to maintain itself at a critical point between order and chaos.
Gerard Vishniak similarly describes how information is related to self-organization in both cellular automata and in nature. Here, Vishniak explains that order in a system depends on its ability to get rid of information that's no longer useful, such as the disorder of the past.
The capacity of cellular automata to display order results precisely from their ability to forget their own history. Self-organizing automata, like the computer game of life, actually cheat. They avail themselves of an invisible garbage truck, which at each time step takes away obsolete information, namely any record pointing to the actual antecedent among all the possible ones. In nature, it might be that organization is cheap. The really hard task is getting rid of disorder, which, among other things, keeps track of the past. Living organisms, such as individuals, termite colonies, the earth, maintain their organized state by exporting their disorder.
We can see here a close parallel between the views of Langton and Vishniak on the one hand and the views of Prigogine on the other. Langton and Vishniak are dealing with the logic of self-organization in abstract information systems. Prigogine is describing self-organization in the material world. Langton, Vishniak, and Prigogine are in a sense dealing with two aspects of the same phenomenon. We have heard Langton say that self-organization requires a finely balanced trade-off between order and chaos, between low and high entropy. Vishniak has described the need to export disorder. The implication for physics and for the real world is that living organisms maintain themselves in a balancing act between order and chaos by continually feeding on low entropy matter and by taking energy from the environment. They dissipate high entropy waste products back into their environment. Prigogine asks a key question. How does life in all its order and vitality exist in a world which the thermodynamic law of entropy says is becoming less orderly? In his words,
what significance does the evolution of a living being have in a world described by thermodynamics, a world of ever-increasing disorder?
Prigogine points out that thermodynamic equilibrium, the state of maximum entropy, must be isolated from energy fluxes. Such an isolated equilibrium produces only dead mechanical order. Prigogine explains this need for isolation by quoting Goethe's Faust. In this story, an alchemist has created a homunculus, or a dwarf-like living being who can exist only if protected by the glass bottle that encloses him.
In order to produce equilibrium, a system must be protected from the fluxes that compose nature. It must be canned, so to speak, or put into a bottle, like the homunculus in Goethe's Faust, who addresses the alchemist who created him. Come, press me tenderly to your breast, but not too hard, for fear the glass might break. This is the way things are. Something natural, the whole world hardly suffices to contain it, but what is artificial demands a closed space.
Prigogine concludes that life, real life, requires
a world like ours, far enough away from the sun for the partial isolation of a system to be conceivable. No cunning is possible at the temperature of the sun, but a world in which non-equilibrium remains the rule, a lukewarm world where equilibrium and non-equilibrium coexist.